Thursday Night Football in Week 2 gave us one of the most entertaining games we'll see all year. And despite Daniel Jones's lights-out performance or Taylor Heineke's heroics, my biggest takeaway, or rather lack of a takeaway, was Saquon Barkley's downright bizarre stat line. He had 13 carries for 57 yards, averaging 4.4 yards per carry, which doesn't seem strange at all. But then you add in the fact that one of those carries went for 41 yards, leaving the other 12 carries for a total of 16 yards, or an abysmal 1.3 yards per carry. So this week I set out to answer a couple of questions. First, why is Saquon Barkley struggling? And second, what can be done to fix his issues? This phenomenon we witnessed on Thursday, where Barkley gets a giant chunk of his yards on 1 or 2 carries, is not new. It's actually a defining quality of Barkley's game, even when he's at his best. Take 2018 for example, Barkley's rookie year when he ran for over 1,300 yards. Now, I want to focus on breakaway runs, which are runs that go for over 15 yards. In 2018, Barkley had 706 of his 1,307 yards come from breakaway runs, equating to 54%. So, the majority of his yards came from runs that went for 15 yards or more, and that might not seem like a lot, but to put it into perspective, the only other player to have more than 50% of his yards come from breakaway runs in the last decade was Adrian Peterson in 2012, when he put together one of the greatest seasons by a running back in NFL history. Barkley's reliance on breakaway yards shouldn't have come as a huge surprise either, considering the numbers he put up in college. In all 3 of his years at Penn State, Barkley accumulated over half of his yards from breakaway runs. Now, going back to his 2018 rookie season, despite ranking 7th in yards per carry and 2nd in total rushing yards, Barkley was 22nd in stuff rate, meaning he had a lot of carries that went for big gains, but also a lot of carries that were stopped at or behind the line of scrimmage. And that brings me to what I saw on film. Barkley must listen to a lot of 50 Cent pregame because "Get Rich or Die Tryin" perfectly encapsulates his rushing style. And I'll use this play from back in 2018 against Carolina as an example of what I mean. The Giants are running outside zone out of the shotgun, which tells the running back to make one decisive cut based on the leverage of the defensive lineman. Against outside zone run plays like this one, the defensive linemen are trying to leverage themselves outside in order to force the running back to cut back into the teeth of the defense, while the offensive linemen are trying to seal their assignments inside. Every time Barkley sees a defensive lineman leveraged outside, he's supposed to move to his next read, but he doesn't. Panthers defensive end Wes Horton wins the leverage battle between himself and the right guard, which should tell Barkley to cut back to where his center had a leverage advantage over the nose tackle. Instead, Barkley took a wide angle around his out-leveraged right guard, and the play went for a 2-yard loss. Barkley is very quick to abandon structure and try to do everything himself. He's the running back equivalent of a quarterback who likes to play what we call hero ball, and this boomer-bust mentality doesn't usually maximize efficiency, but you can get away with it as long as you have enough plays like the one I'm going to show you next. Here, the Giants are running another zone scheme run play where Barkley is again responsible for reading the leverage of the defensive lineman. That responsibility should tell him to hit the backside A-gap for a solid 5 or 6 yard gain, but as usual, Barkley wants to go for the end zone. So he cuts back into the backside C-gap, cuts back again to help his blocker out-leverage Malcolm Jenkins, then somehow breaks like 3 tackles at the same time and goes for a 51-yard touchdown. Barkley's tape is some of the most entertaining yet frustrating tape there is because on one play he'll refuse to meet a smaller DB in an open gap just to get stuffed at the line, but then on the next he'll make some impossible bounce cut and go for a 50-plus yard gain. And like I said before, there's nothing wrong with this mentality as long as you can put up the numbers that Barkley did in 2018. Those numbers, however, have started to disappear over the past few years, and it's easy to assume that the offensive line is 100% at fault, but that just isn't the case. Football Outsiders has a stat called Average Adjusted Line Yards, which tracks the total amount of yards that the offensive line creates for the running back. And in 2018, when Barkley went for 1,300 yards on 5 yards per carry, New York's average adjusted line yards was only 3.9, which ranked 29th in the league. So yeah, his offensive line was really bad, but that didn't stop him from putting up top-tier numbers. And since then, the offensive line has improved. In 2019, they ranked 25th in average adjusted line yards, and in 2020, they got up to 21st. So the offensive line is slowly but consistently improving year over year. Since that legendary 2018 rookie season, Barkley's production has taken a rather significant hit, and his career can unfortunately be divided into two periods of time, which are before high ankle sprain and after high ankle sprain. Before that injury occurred in Week 3 of the 2019 season, Barkley averaged an insane 5.3 yards per carry with 51.6% of his yards coming from breakaway runs. Since then, however, his average yards per carry has dropped to 3.9, and his percentage of yards coming from breakaway runs has dropped to just 34%. The breakaway runs that Barkley relies heavily on to produce are disappearing, and the stuffs that already happen more often than you'd like them to are happening more than ever. I'm not a doctor, so I can't speak on the extent to which Barkley's injury affected and continues to affect his play, and correlation is not causation, so we can't assume that Barkley's injury is what's holding him back. But one way or another, he's not performing at the level we expect him to. Despite his underperformance though, Barkley has yet to adjust his playstyle. Take a look at this play from just last Thursday night against Washington. New York dialed up a variation of inside zone paired with jet motion during the snap. The jet motion moves Jon Bostic away from the frontside A-gap, which allows the left guard to efficiently advance and seal him inside. Look at the size of the open playside B-gap when Barkley gets the ball. All he has to do is hit this gap downhill and take on Cameron Curl, who Barkley has a solid 35-pound advantage over, and live to see another down. But he doesn't. Instead, he makes a last-second cut to the outside and loses 2 yards. This was a good fit from a very good front seven, and when runs are fit well like this, the running back's best bet is to just take what the defense gives him. Here's another example from later in the game. New York is again running inside zone, and Barkley makes the right cut to avoid Chase Young at the mesh point. Then he pushes outside to help his left tackle win the leverage battle over the linebacker, and after that, he's got a chance to take on Landon Collins in the open field, but instead chooses to make a lateral cut and gets tackled by Jonathan Allen, an interior defensive lineman, 7 yards downfield. Physically, Barkley doesn't look like the same player who rushed for 1,300 yards as a rookie. But stylistically, he does, which is concerning. I absolutely believe Barkley still has the physical tools to produce at an elite level like he did as a rookie, but I highly doubt that he does it without a significant change to his playstyle. Can he make a change like that in year 4 or later? I don't know, but that's a far more likely path to success at this stage of his career than continuing to play the same way. He's still one of the most athletically gifted backs that football has ever seen, and that athleticism has allowed him to maintain decent numbers despite injuries and bad offensive line play. But by maintaining an end zone or bust mentality at this stage of his career, Barkley is limiting his potential to be an all-time great running back. Some of the responsibility for his issues probably falls on the coaching staff, but it's lazy to say that his decrease in production is simply a result of poor offensive line play. The offensive line is getting better, and Barkley is getting worse. As a fan, I would love nothing more than to see Barkley get back on the path to a gold jacket that we saw when he was a rookie. He's overcome poor offensive line play and a couple of brutal injuries so far in his career, so we're not exactly in a position to doubt him. But the clock is ticking and the odds are stacked against him. All we can do is hope, for the sake of good football, that Saquon Barkley proves me wrong. Before I go, I want to tell you guys a little bit about the sponsor of today's video, MyBookie. Just by reading some of the comments I get on my videos, I know that a lot of you guys have pretty strong opinions about how things are going to play out this season. So if you want to put your money where your mouth is, MyBookie is the best place to do so. You can bet on pretty much anything. You can choose teams to win outright with moneyline picks, you can pick teams to beat the spread, you can bet on weekly player props, division winners, conference championship winners, or even the Super Bowl winner. MyBookie has got it all. If you're more into sports other than football, MyBookie has MLB, NBA, NHL, MMA, and golf odds as well, just to name a few. And they're giving my viewers a very generous offer of doubling your first deposit of up to $1,000. All you have to do is use my promo code BILLY100 at checkout. So if you want to put your football knowledge to the test, or just make the games a little bit more interesting, MyBookie has got you covered. Again, that's promo code BILLY100 to double your first deposit of up to $1,000 at checkout. Also, I pick at least 5 teams to beat the spread weekly on my Patreon, and in week 2, we went 5-3, so if you want to put your money where my mouth is, or if you'd just like to support the channel, check that out at the link in the description. I think that's all I've got for now, though, so until next time, later.